Up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane.
To the truth. To the truth. To the truth.
It was unlike anything ever observed from Earth. Called by the Hawaiian name Oumuamua, this object continues to baffle scientists. No one can say for sure why it deviated from its expected trajectory and actually sped up as it was moving away from the sun.
But is Earth unique? Given the vastness of space, NASA's Kepler satellite spent almost 10 years observing the same patch of sky. If we apply this idea of the lucky alignment of the planet and its star to all of the data on the discovered exoplanet so far, we see that in our part of the Milky Way, there are about the same number of planets as there are stars.
But for the scientific community to take us seriously, we all have to be able to experience it objectively. And that goes hand in hand with the idea of reproducibility. It's not sufficient to have a one-off observation of something. We have to try to eliminate our biases, especially our attempts to see things the way we want to see them. Science is the last bastion in this culture of fact-checking. Right now we have a media full of lies and misinformation. We have an internet full of lies. It's almost more garbage than it is truth. Yet science is still very much committed to the truth.
All right, welcome everyone. Sorry about those technical difficulties. I will cut them out in the later version. But thank you guys for making it out live. Thank you, Marianne G of G's, and everyone that made it out. I am joined by Dr. Raza. Raza is fine, right? Or Rasaviharii.
Yes, Raza. You can just call me Raza.
All right. Super stoked to have you on today. I think I found the Apollo Detectives YouTube channel on a Twitter link. Someone posted it on Twitter, checked it out, and that's how I came across your presentation. And I was truly blown away by your knowledge. Many of the rabbit holes that you go down, I also go down. And so I just like, I gotta try to reach out and get Dr. Raza on. Now, if you could give us a little bit of background of who you are, what you do, all that jazz, that would be awesome.
Okay, well, mainly I'm a physicist. I work in the area of what you call free energy or 0-point energy. And I'm also the admin of this Facebook group called the Moon Landing Hoax. You have to search a moon-landing hoax. And also we have a YouTube page also called Moon-Landing Hoax. And I also have another YouTube page which is called 0-Point Energy. And so that's it. You know, I live in China. I'm actually working with the Chinese Space Agency on the protection from radiation in deep space. So I have a lot of knowledge about space travel. You know, I'm an astrophysicist. And also I'm a historian. I'm writing a book now about the history of the private central bankers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, you said you're an astrophysicist. I've heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say in the past that there's not very many in the world. So that's pretty awesome. I can't remember what number he gave. It wasn't more than 1,000, if I remember correctly. There's only like a few hundred, according to him anyways. He is full of shit on many other things, so who knows? But I did want to ask you about that. Is that true?
I don't know. I would think there'd be many more. You know, you have NASA and the European Space Agency, Russian Space Agency, India, China, Japan. There must be a lot of people who studied astrophysics, you know, to get a job like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the moon landing for me is it's something that I came into rather late, just only a few years. I think once I started having distrust for government in general, I started looking at many other subjects like 9/11. And it all came for me, at least, was with the 2016 political election. I was, not anymore, I was a huge Bernie bro. And when I saw the election get stolen from him, I was like, and I didn't believe in conspiracies at this point in time. I was a normie, quote unquote. And when I saw, like, man, if this was stolen and if we were lied about this, what else have we been lied to about? And so I started going down many rabbit holes, and the moon landings was one that I started dipping my toes into, but I was still unsure. I was like 50-50, and then I heard I was a subscriber of Neil deGrasse Tyson's Star Talk podcast, and I shared that clip in your Facebook group when I put this in the stream. But that's the clip that turned me from being 50-50 whether we made it or not, having all these inside debates in my head. That as soon as I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say that in 2023 we no longer can make it to the moon, but apparently we had the technology in the 60s with that dinosaur technology to do it, then that's when I was like, yeah, I'm out. I am no longer a believer in the moon landing myth. So I've been wanting to have a show like this, regarding the moon landings, and what better person, in my opinion, to have an actual astrophysicist, someone that is super knowledgeable and works in this tech, and someone that doesn't believe in the moon landings. So give us a little bit of background. What got you down this rabbit hole? It seems like it was several years ago, right?
Yeah. Actually, it really began when I was age 7. There was what was called the Iranian hostage crisis and the Iranian Revolution. And I was just 7 years old, but my mother taught me, these guys are just trying to get Carter out of office because Carter was an anti-war president. Mm-hmm. So they organized this Iranian hostage crisis in order to smear his name. So I was just 7 years old when I learned that the government was lying and cheating. And I was offered a job at NASA in 1999. But I turned them down because I said, I'm leaving the country. I don't like this country. And so then later, I was in 2001. I happened to be in New York City when 9/11 happened. But that was actually no surprise to me, because even from when Bush was elected, there was I don't know if you remember this, but there was a voter fraud way back at the time when Bush was elected. His brother was
Gore, without Gore.
Right, his brother was in Florida, and so they had to recount the ballots in Florida. This was way back before 9/11, and it was no surprise to me that this thing was all a hoax. But what happened regarding the moon landings was I saw Bart Sibrel's documentary. A funny thing happened on the way to a moon, and that other one, what happened on the moon, back in 2001. But me being a scientist and having a background in astrophysics, that was a little hard to believe. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That's going a little far with the moon landing being a hoax. So it was very difficult for me to really consider that seriously. But then what happened was, I was going to fly from America to India, and I was getting on my airplane at the JFK airport in New York City. And as I was walking to my plane, they had this full-size, life-size image, a life-size image of the man on the moon in the airport. And then you can see the astronaut and the mountains in the background. And you had the the forescreen and the back screen. Okay, so if you can look at that image, life size, extremely high resolution, blown up life size, you can see that the mountains in the background and the forescreen, there's a different grains, how to say, camera grains. The grain on the
pixelated?
film, it wasn't pixelated because it's not a digital image, but
Okay.
it's the grains on the ground he's standing changes when it's in the background. You can't see this on a computer screen, but maybe if you ever go to the JFK airport in New York, you can see this full life-size image. You can stand next to him and take your picture, and he's the same size as you. And when you see that clarity, you can see the background and the foreground are a different image. And so I was convinced at that time. So from 2001, and started a Facebook group around 2008, and then I was offered a job with the Chinese Space Agency in 2016, but I turned them down. And then in 2020, my Facebook group went viral. So, from 2008 until 2020, we only had 1,000, 2,000 members at most. And then all of a sudden from 2020, the group started climbing, and we went from 2,000 to 42,000. And I had a change of heart. So in 2022, I accepted the job with the Chinese Space Agency. And so they asked me to do research on radiation protection materials. So that's my job. China knows that the moon landings were a hoax, and we're trying to find solutions in order to really send men to the moon.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting times that we're living in right now. Last week I had an author from India who we did a breakdown on The Shining and all the NASA Easter eggs involved in there. It was a real fun conversation last week. But he was surprised living in India. He was like, there's still people that believe in the moon landing. Like, it was a complete shocker to him. I'm like, yeah, if you dare question the moon landings out here in America, you're the one that's crazy. You're the one that's lost their minds, even though everything looks fake as hell, man. But it was interesting to get his take from another part of the world. He was like, that's odd. People take that seriously still. So when I heard you talking about how the Chinese government is fully aware that the moon landings were fake, I was like, ooh, I hadn't heard that angle. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about that, that'd be awesome.
Well, let me just say, because I've had a long history with this subject, and I first started the moon landing hoax group way back in 2008, and Facebook shut me down several times, back then.
Yeah.
And so but the main thing is I have a lot of experience with what we call trolls, trolls coming into my group, debating with me. And so this is the main thing. I'm trying to present a list of smoking guns, because these are the issues which trolls can't debate with you. Okay? So the reason I made this group is this list of smoking guns is because I have a long experience of debating with some people. We just call them NASA fanboys, the people who are fighting. No, it was real. And some people are just actually trolls, like paid professionals. So I've had experience with both the paid professionals and just the normal fanboys. And so, so I've had a lot of experience debating with them. So this is why I made this list. Regarding China, it's a little bit of a long story, but they made a deal with NASA in 1984, which says, don't blow the whistle on us. And if you don't blow the whistle on us, we will continue sharing technology with you. So from 1984 until today, the Chinese space program is receiving technical support from NASA. And that's the agreement. NASA is providing technology as long as China doesn't blow the whistle. And the other part of the agreement is NASA agreed to blow the whistle on themselves. So this is what they told China, that just don't blow the whistle on us, just wait for us to blow the whistle on ourselves. And there's many different space organizations around the world like that. The European Space Agency, the India, China, and Japan, they all have this agreement, is just keep your guys quiet until 2026, and then we're just going to admit to the whole world that the Apollo missions were a hoax. And a lot of people don't like to hear this, because a lot of people, they don't have trust in NASA. It's like, well, they lied once, they're going to lie again. So a lot of people say, no, they would never admit this thing was a hoax. And I can understand their skepticism over that. However, the thing that you don't understand is there are many, many people working in different space agencies around the world who know this thing was a hoax. And the reason that they're not talking is because NASA said, just keep quiet for a while and we'll admit this thing. Especially those of us like myself who specifically work in the field of radiation protection, because that's the reason why they had to fake the moon landings, because they had no protection from the radiation back then. So we're developing all new high-tech 3D laser printed materials specifically designed for radiation protection. And so those of us who work in the field of radiation protection, it's obvious that, you see, what they're saying is the official excuse or the official lie, which they're telling, is that the reason we need radiation protection now, and we didn't need it back then, is because back then it was just a short trip to the moon. But this is totally not true. Even a one-day trip to the moon, the radiation's going to kill you, but that's what they're saying is, oh, we're trying to make a trip to Mars, or we're trying to make a moon base, and these long duration trips need radiation protection. But yeah, no, this is not true. It's even a short trip through the Van Allen belts, you're finished without radiation protection material.
You mean to tell me that a thin sheet of tinfoil wrapped around doesn't cut it?
No, not at
it's
all.
Hilarious. Remember, I was telling you, I'm fairly new to the, not believing the whole moon landings. But I remember going to Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, to see the lunar lander. And that was another piece to my puzzle of not believing the myth. I'm like, you're telling me this flimsy ass thing that couldn't survive a typical Florida hurricane made it to the moon and back? You gotta be kidding me. Like, where did all these people fit in? How the hell did they stow away the damn lunar rover? But as David McGowan says, that's probably 1960s tech that we can't replicate today. That's the excuse we're giving anyways. You could stow away a little cart and bug around the moon with. But yeah, it's the whole story falls apart, and there's so many, just like many other quote unquote conspiracies. Because if you don't believe in the moon landing, you're a conspiracy theorist. And even though there's a preponderance of evidence to support a lot of these quote unquote conspiracy theories, that's just a way to shut down any legitimate discourse or conversation. It's surprising how many times, especially on Twitter, I get into these back and forths with people that believe in the, like you say, maybe they're paid trolls, and they're always defending the NASA moon myth. And I tell them, let's debate it. I'm a dumbass. I'm not an intellectual by any means, but I would gladly debate you on this. And they never seem to want to do it. They're scared. But that's why an idiot like myself, I'm a self-proclaimed dumbass, I feel confident because there's just so many things to point out. You don't have to be an astrophysicist or anything to see the holes in the whole myth. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, it looks good when you say it, but I mean, I think the average person can defend them. Can put up a debate against anyone defending that myth.
Right. So the reason, what I would like to present today is this list which I call the 12 smoking guns. And the reason I made this list is to help people like yourself present a stronger case, okay? Because there's what I call two categories. One is the smoking guns, and one is the things which make you go, So for example, you were talking about the lunar lander. It looks flimsy. These are things which make you go,
Yeah.
It's not really a smoking gun, because they're always going to have excuses for that. Well, there's no atmosphere in space, so the ship doesn't need to be strong. That would be the excuse they give, So what I would like to present now is what I call the real smoking guns, which are the strongest pieces of evidence, that even the NASA fanboys or the trolls, they can't even defend against these, because if they did, they would just be making fools of themselves. It's so obvious when you find flaws in the photographic and video evidence, then there's no refuting. Okay?
Yeah, this is perfect. Right. So what you guys are about to hear is this presentation by Dr. Raza. And share this conversation. If you've got friends and family that are on the fence, they will not want to miss this. So eyes peeled, you are in class. Take us to school, doctor.
All right. So first of all, let me say I have this list which I call 12 smoking guns. And there obviously are more than 12. But these are just the 12 which I call the strongest arguments. And also, this is just a really quick list. For each one of these points, I'm going to present one or two different examples. But there's many more. So I'm giving this to you so you can start doing your own research, okay? So let's start off here. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. And we're starting with what I call diverging shadows. Okay, so you can see this picture. Ooh, maybe you can't click the screen icon. Click the screen icon in your address bar. Uh-oh. Let me try that again. Something went wrong. Maybe if I do the entire screen, hopefully that's going to
There we go. I see it popping up right now. Okay, there we go. Perfect.
So you can see the astronaut on the moon, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So first thing to mention is it's always important to write the number of the image. So this is AS14-68-9487. Because I'm just saying that because a lot of people come in my group and they're like showing an image and it's like, what's the image number? Because it's important so other people can find it and research it. So what we're showing here, you see the two red lines is showing the direction of the shadows, right? So the ship is creating a shadow this way, and these rocks are creating a shadow that way. So that's what we call diverging shadows. So this is absolute proof of a close light source, okay? This is not the sun. The sun cannot do this. Now, let me see if I can come back here. Whoa. Let me explain this a little bit. First of all, it's important to know what would the excuse that the trolls try to make for this. They would try to say, oh, this is due to uneven ground. Okay, so let me try to explain that point. Let's say you have a ground. Let's say you're on a hill, okay? And the hill is shaped like this, right? Okay, so let's say and then you have two people, one standing on this side of the hill and one standing on that side of the hill. That would create diverging shadows, okay? But if the ground was curved like this and you had two people, then their shadows would be converging, right? But you can tell from the image, this is not a hill like that. It's not a hill like this. This is a flat land, okay? So this excuse about uneven ground, it doesn't work, you know? This is totally flat ground, okay?
Just a quick reminder, if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast player and you want to see the images, Spotify plays my videos, but check out the Rokfin and Odyssey channels as well for the actual images. All right?
All right. Now I'm going to show another example of this. Okay. Can you see my picture again? All right.
Absolutely.
So here's another example. The famous Buzz Aldrin flag salute. So again, you can see the shadows are diverging. Yes. You can see that, right?
Yeah. The flag has its shadow going left, and then the astronauts' shadows are going right.
No. This is a different. This flag, you don't see the flag shadow here. It's too far off the picture. You have the ship shadow, you have his shadow, and you have this rock shadow, and they're not parallel. They're all coming from a very close light source. Okay. Now, let me just come back here, because there's one important point I want to say here, is there are other moon landing researchers who are presenting images, which they also call smoking guns, and it's showing these converging shadows. And this is not a smoking gun, because in order for it to be a smoking gun, the camera and the light source has to be at a 90-degree angle, okay? The person taking the photo has to be at a 90-degree angle from the light source, because if the person taking the photo is looking towards the light source or looking away from the light source, then you're going to have what's called perspective. And perspective means, if you're standing on a railroad tracks, you see the railroad tracks converging into the distance, right? So that's perspective. So if there's an image where the light is at your back or the light is at your front, you're going to have perspective. So you can't use this as a proof of a hoax. And sometimes, some people are pointing out different rocks, well, this rock has a shadow pointing this way, and that rock has a shadow pointing this way. This is all just strange shaped rocks. Again, this is not proof of a hoax, okay? in order to, and also the only way to have converging shadows is having two light sources, okay? One light source is pointing this shadow that way and another light source. But you can't do that, because if there was two light sources, then each rock would have two shadows. Okay? So I'm just trying to say is the real smoking guns are when you have these diverging shadows, because diverging shadows is a proof of a close light source. Okay. So that covers my first smoking gun here. I just showed you two examples of these diverging shadows. The cameraman is at a 90-degree angle from the direction of the sun, and you see the shadows diverging. These are the real smoking guns. So you're welcome to keep searching through the NASA database and find more examples of these. Okay, I just showed you two really good examples. All right, so let's moving on to the next smoking gun here. The next one is the famous ladder jump. Now the ladder jump, see, I had personally discovered this smoking gun on my own. And then later on, it came out on this movie, American Moon. I had actually found that smoking gun before American Moon, but that doesn't really matter who found it first. Anyway, it's a very interesting. So let me try to share my screen here again, hopefully. Okay. So hopefully, can you see this?
Absolutely.
All right. So this astronaut is about to jump up onto the ladder. And when he jumps, his feet and his hands miss the ladder, and he's dangling in the air for a little while until he finally grabs the ladder. Okay? It's kind of quick, but just watch it. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Jump. You see his legs dangling. Now he gets his feet onto the ladder. Okay, so you see it's very, very clear he's dangling in the air. Okay, his feet are off the ladder, his hands are off the ladder. Jump, dangling, dangling, dangling. Aha. Now he gets his. Okay, this is wow, this is a very clear proof of a hoax here. Okay. So you could see that, right? You could see him dangling
Absolutely,
in the air.
Yeah.
Right. So this
I mean, a lot of these videos, I've been watching a lot of them, and I read the comments, and so many people are like, "Oh my gosh, my heart stopped when I watched this." And my perspective, I'm laughing at the comedy. You know, it's just so hilarious to me to watch now that I don't believe in them.
Yeah, one thing is, it's always good to be skeptical. It's always good to ask yourself, maybe I'm wrong about all this.
Yeah.
Maybe it was real. Maybe it was real. But every time I keep coming back to clips like this, I'm like, no way. How could that be? He's dangling in the air from a wire, and the shadows are diverging. This is there's no way to refute these things.
Right.
All right. So now let's go to the point number 3. This one is a really interesting point here. So hopefully I'm going to be able to share screen again.
And you gave me the Cliff's Notes earlier, so I know what I'm expecting here.
Okay. So let me share screen. I'm going to do entire screen. Okay.
There we go.
So Now, can you see this one?
Yep. Ready to go.
All right. So this is the famous Apollo 12 docking scene. Watch this antenna up here flopping. Could you see that? Can you see this antenna I'm talking about?
Yeah, it looks like it's
Let's
loose.
try to watch. Yeah, let me watch it again. See it? It's dangling and it's waving around. And this is clear sign of Earth's gravity. Okay? This cannot happen in space with it dangling like that, and flopping around. This is a proof of gravity. So
This is
antenna
exquisite stuff right here.
The antenna drops down. You see, the ship is turning, and when it turns, the antenna drops, and then it wiggles like that. And this is a clear sign of gravity. Okay, this cannot happen in space where there's no gravity. Where it's dangling, and it's being played back in slow motion. They're doing that with all the clips, playing it back in slow motion. If you speed it up to normal speed, it's even more obvious. But I'm using official NASA clips here, okay? Now, there was the person who discovered this is a member of my group. He's the one who came in my group and said, check this out. The antenna is dangling. And I was, wow, this is one of the biggest smoking guns I've ever seen. And it's such a big smoking gun that NASA actually deleted this clip from their webpage. They're actually trying to hide. They're trying to hide this clip because it's such a clear smoking gun.
Yeah.
And the guy who presented this to me, he said, I asked him, I said, have any trolls tried to come and debate you about this point? And he said, yeah. What they said is they tried to say, you're the one who sped up the film. Okay, you're the one who made it look like it's a hoax because you sped up the film. But this is official NASA film here. This is not me speeding it up. You just saw the webpage. This is somebody took this clip from the original NASA footage before they deleted it from their webpage. Let me just show you proof, okay, that they deleted it from their webpage, okay? I'm going to show you now the NASA webpage, and you can find this clip is missing, okay? So let me share screen again. Okay, here we go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, share screen is slow. Oops, okay. So hopefully you can see this. Can you see this? Apollo 12 Lunar Surface Journal.
Affirm.
Yes? So this is the official NASA webpage. Now, it says here, it has here the landing day. These are clips from the day they landed. The first EVA means the first time they step out of the ship. Second EVA, okay. And then if you go down a little bit more, background material. Here's the video and movie clips, okay? So this is where it should be. It should be here, Apollo 12 Video Library. And here they have the first EVA. They call this A Visit to the Snowman. And then here, there's the famous, there's a famous quote when he first steps out of the ship. There's a famous quote, "That may have been one small step for Neil, but that was a large step for me." So that's a famous quote when the first step, Apollo 12, right? This is the second time they landed on the moon. And then it's showing here, his coming out of the ship and this walking around, the TV troubles. Okay, this is also part of the first EVA. And down here, wake up, get ready for EVA 2. And then there's nothing more. Where's the rest of the video clips? This video clip comes from the return to orbit. Okay, so here, this is the video library. And that you can check all of these video clips. It's not there. It's just not there. Where is it? You know, let's come back here. Return to orbit. That it should be here.
Yeah.
Return to orbit, right? This is return to orbit. And they have here some audio clips. Here's the word-for-word conversation. Word-for-word conversation. And then there's no video clips here. You know, it should be here. Oh, we're coming back to orbit, but there's no video clips anywhere in this. So it's just not there. This is, like I said, this is the NASA webpage, and the video clips are not here. This can only be found on those few people who managed to get this clip before NASA deleted it from their webpage.
That's interesting.
All right. Yep. So there you go. That's one of the biggest smoking guns. So big that NASA's trying to hide it. All right. So that was smoking gun number 3. Let's keep going now. I'm going to show you another clip. This is the famous, what I call, the mannequin on the rover.
Yeah. I watched this clip personally 3 times today, and I couldn't stop laughing each and every time. So,
yes.
One of my favorites that you show.
So let me share screen again. Okay.
All right.
So
perfect.
So again, this is Apollo 16 Lunar Apollo Flight Journal. So this is the official NASA YouTube page. Okay. And now let's just watch through this thing a little bit. Okay. So. All right. So you can see his hand is not even touching the steering wheel. I'm gonna come back to that point later.
Yeah. Look how little that damn lander looks, though. Come on, man. It's all miniature shit.
Okay. Now watch his left arm. Watch his left arm here as he drives by the camera. Okay. It's coming now. You can see his left arm is here. His left arm is just stuck in position.
Yeah. Just free hanging, no hands on steering wheels or nothing. Just free hanging.
I'll come to that point later. Let's see. He's going to do another pass. Let me forward it again. Okay. Watch his left arm again.
Oh boy.
Okay, watch his left arm again. His left arm is just there in the same position. All right.
This reminds me of the LAX shooting. I don't know if you remember that. happened several years ago, I think in 2013 or so. And allegedly people got shot, and they're wheeling some dude out in a wheelchair, and it's clearly a mannequin. It's clearly a mannequin, and the helicopters were showing it, like dramatic footage. They're wheeling someone out. They got shot, and it's clearly one of those test dummies. Remember those crash dummies in the 80s movies that tell you to wear the seatbelt? It was one of those kind of dummies. It's the same kind of stuff.
So let me explain the steering wheel question, okay? So the steering wheel is in the middle between the two seats, okay? It's a joystick steering wheel. You push it. He has his right hand on the steering wheel, and then you go to the right, left, forward, reverse. This is how it's a joystick steering wheel. Now, and then his left hand is just there in the air, It's like it just stays there. That would be totally unnatural, for a human being. Some NASA trolls tried to make the excuse that, well, this is comfortable because the pressurization of the suit. But it's not. You see, if you were bouncing around like this, you wouldn't be comfortable. And then also if you really look closely, his right hand is not even on the joystick. It's just like an inch or so above the joystick. So this is totally a mannequin that they just put on a remote control rover. They have somebody steering the rover remote control, and there's a mannequin sitting in this strap to the seat.
What's interesting at the very beginning, doesn't he say this isn't fake or something along those lines? Or
let me come back to the beginning part again.
Yeah.
But let me just say this: this is not the only time that they used the mannequin. Mm-hmm. I have a series of photographs where they were snapping pictures, what they call the pan. It's like snap, 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 and then he's like snap, snap, and then you see a mannequin. He snaps, snap, 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 and all these pictures in a row that the mannequin doesn't move. So there's several examples of this mannequin. I just showed you one of when he's driving the rover. But let me just come back to one more NASA excuse here. Okay, the NASA excuse is that this is not a mannequin because he moves his arm. So I'm going to show you this trick they did in order to make it not appear like a mannequin. So let me share screen again. It's just here at the beginning. Okay, you can see my screen again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so check it out. You see his arm is up in the air, right? The arm here is at a different angle, right, from when he's driving. So let's see. You can see his left arm here at this angle. Now watch his left arm carefully. They're filming. The camera's moving around, and then all of a sudden, boom, right there. I don't know if you saw it, but now his left arm is at a different angle. Before it was at a slightly higher angle, and then now it's at the normal angle he uses when he's driving. So this is their proof that it's not a hoax. And you can clearly see where they cut the video film. You see his arm is up, his arm is up, arm up, cut the film, and now the arm is down. I don't know if you saw that. You can watch this closely.
Yeah.
When you go home. But what they're doing is the arm is up, and then they cut the film, and then they move the arm down, and then they start rolling again. It's very clear where they cut the film. So they're trying to tell, the NASA trolls are saying, this is not a mannequin because he moved his arm from up to down. But they just cut the film, and they just moved the mannequin's arm down. It's very clear, there's no way they can debunk this,
What's your theory on why they would use a mannequin instead of a real human?
That is an interesting thing. My theory is that it would just be too bumpy of a ride for an actual human being.
Mm.
You know, you would be like boom, boom, boom. You know, it would
whiplash everywhere.
You couldn't even hold the steering wheel. You know, if you're bumping around so much. You know.
Yeah. Okay.
The other one, there's some other, like I said, this is just one example, the video of him driving, but there's other examples of the use of the mannequin where they just set the mannequin up and they tick, and I don't know why they do that. It could be that in certain scenes, they just wanted it to be a one-man job. You know, it's like we got one guy in the spacesuit taking pictures, and we just didn't want to have a second guy there, so we just put a mannequin in a spacesuit for certain pictures. You know. So anyway, I could, you know, we're just going to try to move fast through these, but like I said, there's many examples of each one of these points. Okay. So let me move on to the next point. Okay, now this point, it's a little bit complicated to explain, but I'm going to try to explain it here. Ooh. Huh. YouTube is now changing. Oh, God. Oh, my goodness, this is so weird. YouTube just screwed me. Huh. They're asking me to update my browser. See if I can get it now. Yeah, okay, I'm there. All right. So this is the famous sharing screen. Your browser. Oh, yeah. Share screen. Select window. Okay. Here we go. So this is the famous, again, this is Apollo 11, Apollo Flight Journal. This is the official NASA YouTube page. And this is what I call the dashboard cam. There's a video camera inside the ship looking down at Neil Armstrong's first steps on the moon. Okay? You following me here?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now Buzz Aldrin comes out of the ship, and then you can see the two-man. For some reason, they play it back in fast speed, but anyway, we're just going to watch a second here. Blah, 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 they're walking around. And then now, you can see the length of their shadows. Okay, this guy has a long shadow, and this guy has a short shadow. Okay, now this is also very clear proof of stage lighting. You can see how it's very bright up here. The ground is bright, and over here the ground is dark, yes? So that we call a hot spot, you know. This is where the light is pointing over here, and over here the light is less. So again, there's two proofs of a hoax here. One is that the light is bright. The second is that this guy's shadow is longer. So let me try to explain. This is a complicated point. So let me try to explain this. Now, okay, imagine you have a stage light and two actors on the stage. Okay? So the actor which is closest to the stage light is going to have a longer shadow. Let me this is a little bit complicated to explain. Let's say everybody is familiar with this. If you're walking down the street and there's a street light, when you move towards the street light, your shadow gets shorter, shorter, shorter. And as you pass the street light, your shadow gets longer, 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 right? Everybody's familiar with that. That's because when you and the street light are at a 180-degree angle, you're just below the street light. You have almost no shadow. And then the further away you get from the street light, the shadow is going to get longer and longer. So it's the same thing now. If you tilt the light here, if you're standing over here towards the direction of the streetlight, your shadow is going to be short. And if you move closer to this, your shadow is going to be longer, because the angle of the light is a more, the actual mathematical terms, this is called the obtuse angle, right? The more obtuse your angle is, the shorter your shadow will be. So if you're standing over here, your shadow will be shorter because it's a less obtuse, and if you're getting closer, your shadow will be longer. This is a more obtuse angle. Okay, or you can also, another mathematical term is a perpendicular. Perpendicular means a 90-degree angle. So the more perpendicular you are, the longer your shadow will be, and the less perpendicular you are, the shorter your shadow will be. Okay, so again, it's a little bit, a lot of people have had questions about this. They don't understand the terminology I'm using here, perpendicular, obtuse angles. But anyway, it's just, this is a very clear proof of a stage lighting, because if it was the sun, these two men would have the same length shadow, no matter where they're standing, right? Of course, the NASA trolls will try to come and say, well, the reason his shadow is longer is because of uneven ground. They always use this excuse. Oh, the ground is not even, that's why his shadow is not longer. No, it's totally nonsense. This is a flat ground they're standing on, you know, and they're so close. There's not some kind of a hill he's standing on. No, it's not like that at all.
I call them NASA apologists, because it's just, they've got excuses for everything. No matter how silly their excuse may sound, they have it.
Yeah.
But that's why something like what you're presenting right here, I mean, this is rock solid stuff right here.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to come into the famous astronauts falling down and getting up with the help of wires. Okay. These are great, you know. Let me share screen. I'll get a hang of this thing as I do it more times. Okay, can you see my YouTube?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is one most people are familiar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He falls down. Oh. And then the other guy, help me get up. Push on my head. And he just magically floats up.
He's zapped some power into him. Wasn't this the clip that I think you and I are about the same age. I'm 41 years old. But remember in the early 90s, there was a show on Fox, of all places, on national television about the moon landings. And this is one of the clips that really drew a nerve to a lot of NASA apologists.
That movie was called What Happened on the Moon. It was released in 2000. Okay. So What Happened on the Moon was a 2000 documentary. It came out just before Bart Sibrel's video came out in 2001. But this What Happened on the Moon is actually the What Happened on the 2000. 2000 okay. Was when, yeah. So, but I had first seen that in 2001. I watched Bart's documentary, and I watched What Happened on the Moon documentary in 2001. And yeah, that clip, it really made it hard to believe in the moon landings after that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me show you an even more clear example of this. Okay. Even a more clear one. Now, the thing is, the official NASA excuse is the other astronaut is helping him up. Okay. That's the excuse they give. That's the reason why it looks like I don't even know how that could make sense. But he says, push on my head. What? Push down on my head? Push up on my head? No, he's not even pushing on his head at all.
It looks like some Lazarus, clip. The raising of Lazarus. He's putting hands over his helmet, and that has magical powers apparently. Yeah, the whole clip is ridiculous.
Right. So now, the thing is, in that clip, they were quite far away from the camera. All right. So now I want to show you another clip where they're very close to the camera, and then it becomes very clear what's going on here. So let me share screen. Go. Okay, so you ready? This is Apollo 16 from the EVA-1, Part 7. Here we go. He falls down. Uh-oh. Help me up. Now watch the other guy who's helping him up. He supposedly lifted him up. Okay, if you look at his hand, he's not even touching the other guy. His hand is, you see, he's not lifting him up. Okay, he's just getting up with the help of wires.
There's no way.
And the other guy's pretending. No, the other guy's pretending that he's helping him up. Okay.
No. There's no way.
So he's like, I'm helping you up, but if you look carefully at his arm, he's not even touching him.
He's not even touching him.
He puts his arm there. They had practiced this. Okay, I'm going to pretend like he put his arm there like I am helping you up, but he's not giving any force at all to actually helping him up. So again, the NASA excuse is that the other guy is helping him up. But it's just not true. You could, if you look carefully at these videos, he's not helping him up at all.
So silly.
Okay, so now we're coming into a series. This is a very important point here. This is my next smoking gun. And this is what I call NASA is caught with their hand in the cookie jar. It means that I am going to present you now with evidence that NASA is photoshopping their images in order to cover up the fact that they faked it. So I'm going to show you a series of images, and all these images are coming from Internet Archives. The reason is because Internet Archives is showing you the date in which this image was uploaded to the internet. Okay, so this is a record, and actually you could use this in a court of law. It's like, here's a record of when this image was uploaded to the internet. And this is important because the excuse NASA claims is that the photoshopped images came before the non-photoshopped images. So they're saying, you see, what happened was in 2000, 2001, these two documentaries came out. What happened in the moon was 2000. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon was 2001. After this time, NASA realized that they made a mistake. Okay, you see, like I said, I first heard about the moon landing hoax in 2001. And the first thing I did was I went to the NASA webpage and I started downloading as many images as I could. And then like a few years later, the NASA webpage disappeared. And then all of a sudden in 2010, a new NASA webpage was built and all new photoshopped images. So what happened was in 2000, they realized they messed up. They said, we have to go back and fix these images because it's very clear proof of a hoax. So they removed the old webpage. It took them 10 years to Photoshop because there's hundreds, if not thousands of images they had to Photoshop. That took them 10 years to Photoshop all these things.
Is that what you're saying? So I like to share this article quite a bit. It's from Reuters. I believe it came out in 2006, where NASA admits to over 200,000 of the original tapes being erased. But no worries, guys. Even though 200,000 were accidentally erased, allegedly, they've been fully restored by NASA, and now the public has access to. It kind of sounds like that's correlated to that. Is it?
I'm not familiar with that article. You should send it to me sometime.
I'll send you that article. I like to share the crap out of it because people always want official source. Reuters? Come on. You believe in the mainstream narrative. Take this from Reuters, and the title itself is damning. It says NASA admits to deleting over 200,000 of the original tapes. 200,000, man. Think about, we're not talking about 200,000 seconds or minutes. We're talking about 200,000 tapes.
Yes. All right, so let me share screen again. I'm going to take you here to the Internet Archives. Hopefully, if my browser opens. It's very slow. There was, you see, I started exposing these things back in 2019. I was doing some shows, and I started showing people, I said, here we can use Internet Archives to prove that the non-photoshopped images came before the photoshopped images, because Internet Archives shows the date where these things were published. Okay?
I still haven't got it yet.
I know. I'm trying to share screen. For some reason, my internet is really slow.
No worries. I'm gonna send you that article so you have it. Yeah, I should share it in your group. I am a proud member of your Facebook group. That's impressive. 43,000 members. I mean, when I tried searching it, I couldn't find it, so it is shadow banned. The only time I was able to find it was when you and I became friends on Facebook, and then it popped up in my feed because we were friends. But trying to search it manually, it wasn't popping up.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed you're still on with 43,000 followers. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. Perfect.
So, you can see this, Internet Archives. Can you see the man on the moon?
Yeah, that's the original one, isn't it? And then they photoshopped it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So you can see how the bright light is here, and then as you go to the back, it's really dark. Yes.
And even in the front, it's dark.
In the front, it's dark, and here it's super bright because of spotlight. Okay, this is not sunlight. Okay, and here, ta-da! It's fixed. The back is all lit up. They photoshopped it, right?
Yeah. That one is one of the clearest examples of the Photoshop, because the original, you can clearly see the focus is on the astronaut itself. The rest of the background is darker compared to where the astronaut is standing. And in the Photoshop version, everything is equal.
Right. So here we go. Look at the date. If you go down here, add date. 2010, July 16.
Oh,
interesting. They chose the anniversary. Okay, so 2000, like I said, 2010 was when they made a whole new NASA webpage, and they uploaded thousands of photoshopped images in 2010.
Yeah.
So let's come back here to the original one. Here's the non-photoshopped image. What is the add date? 2009. Okay. December of 2009. So this is very clear proof that the Internet Archives has the date which this was added to the internet. So this one came before the Photoshop one. You can prove this now in a court of law that this one came later. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me I'm going to try to give you a few more examples of this, because we don't just want one image to go by here. Hopefully this is going to load. Yes. Here we go. Can you see this one? Can you see this
Same
one?
deal, yeah. It's
bright light.
One tiny little section is clearly lit up. So I just like to describe things for the people that are listening to audio only. If you want the images, check out the video. But yeah, in this picture that we're imaging, if you want to describe it, Doctor.
Well, like I'm saying, it's the same thing. You have the dark in the corners, and then here in the center is really bright where he's standing on the spotlight. What is the ad date? 2009, right? Now let's go here to the photoshopped one. Hopefully that's going to pop up. Ta-da!
It's so ridiculously different. And so if you're a skeptic, you have to ask yourself, why go through all this damn trouble if you got nothing to hide?
And then here's here's the ad date, 2010. This came later, right? This came later. It's very clear. So what is the excuse NASA is giving for this? Okay, what is the excuse? And some of the images, like for example, if you go to their Flickr page, and NASA has a Flickr page where you can also download these images. And if you download the images from their Flickr page, and then you right click on the image and you go to image properties, it says this image was made by Photoshop. It says there on the image itself that this was made by Photoshop. So what is the excuse NASA is giving for this? I've had to deal with trolls, so I know their excuses. So NASA says that the reason is because we just so happen to use Photoshop as the program for our scanner. When we rescanned the images, the scanner was sending the images through Photoshop, but we weren't actually touching up the images. Okay, this is the excuse they're making.
It's almost like they're admitting it, if you really think about it. It's strange. And so they're saying, see, the excuse they give is that, well, these old images was just a bad scan. Okay? The old images was just a bad scan. So that's why we had to do a new scan. And in the new scan, we adjusted the light levels a little bit. Yeah, the contrast, the brightness, the saturation, all that jazz. Get out of here.
But see, here's the point. Here's the point is, at what point are you not editing the videos? Yeah, if you just change the light settings, but once you adjust the contrast, you are manipulating the images.
Yeah.
If you're just doing light settings, but see, that won't do it. If you just change the contrast, then this will also be bright, and that once you change the contrast, that's not going to do it. There's a tool which is called on Photoshop, which is called the lasso tool, and what you do is you lasso around the parts where you don't want to change. So the background, which is not under the lasso tool, you can adjust that while keeping this the same brightness. So this is how they did it. They used what's called the lasso tool, and they highlighted the areas they didn't want to change, and then they could change the other areas. So that's how they did it, okay? So, and I just a few days ago, one troll came into my group, and he said, well, that's not proof of Photoshop. And then he sent me a video of himself using Photoshop in order to make one image look like the other image. It's like, wait a minute, you just use Photoshop to prove they didn't use Photoshop? Oh, it's so ridiculous. So like I said, when the trolls try to debate these points, they're just making fools of themselves, because these are non-debatable points. And I'm also, by using Internet Archives, I'm proving that these images are of an earlier date. Again, here's the famous flag salute, and you can see here, you can see this, right?
Yep.
Okay, here's the ground over here is quite bright behind him, and the ground way back here in the corner is very dark, right? You can see that, yes?
Yep.
And now we're going to come to the new photoshopped image. Ta-da! They brightened it up, here in the background.
Everything is parallel now. What are the odds?
Well,
are the odds?
Yeah. And again, the add date, this is 2010. Whereas if you go back to the original, here's the 2009. Okay. So yes, definitely this one came before. Let's give a few more, just the last few more examples of this.
This reminds me of like O.J. Simpson. Everyone in the public eye accuses him of murdering Nicole, and he, and then he writes a book. He goes, "If I were the killer," something along the lines. I don't know, for whatever reason that keeps popping into my mind, like this whole Photoshop stuff.
Interesting. All right, you can see this image, right? This is also Apollo 11. He sets up this little solar-powered thingamajig, whatever it is. And here's the spotlight is over here in the center of between him and the ship, and over here in the background is very dark, right? You can see that, yes?
Yes.
All right, let's go to the new Photoshop image. Ta-da! All fixed up.
It's so drastic.
All even now.
It's not so for the people that are just listening only, you have to see these images. The change from the Photoshop version to the original version is so drastic. It's not even subtle. You know what I'm saying? It's a completely different picture.
Yeah, really fancy Photoshop work they're doing here. And again, the ad date. This is the Photoshopped one is 2010. And the non-Photoshopped one is 2009.
And you know what's funny? The original ones look cooler. Like, they look dramatic and everything and look amazing. But their amazing effects, it seems like, backfired when people caught on to the whole spotlight effect.
Right. Like I said, back in 2001, that's when I went to the NASA webpage. That's what I was downloading.
Yeah.
But then they removed all the images from their webpage. So back in 2001, this is what you got from the NASA webpage. But after 2010, wow, everything's all fixed,
Yeah.
All right. Let me just show you a couple, just the last couple ones, just to prove that this is not only Apollo 11. Okay, it's also other missions. Here we go. Apollo 12. Apollo 12, here's the spotlight, yes? And over here it's very dark, and over here it's very bright, yes? You can see that?
I can, yeah.
So that's Apollo 12, huh? So it's not, and again, this one was added a little later, but this is the Apollo 12 image that hasn't been photoshopped. If you go to the new NASA webpage, you can find the photoshopped one. And then just one last one here is, now here is, I'm taking you to the NASA webpage. This is an image they forgot to Photoshop, which you can find it directly on the NASA webpage now. Hopefully that's going to open. 5866. Huh. It's not opening. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's opening now. So here we are in the Apollo webpage, right? You can see it?
Yep.
All right. Let's 5866. Let me try to find it. 5866. Okay. 5866. Okay. So here we go. This is the NASA webpage. So I'm just taking, this is the AS11-40-5866. Here's the high resolution one here. And now, it's so funny. You look under the ship, it's really bright. Yes. And here in the back it's dark. So this is one they forgot to Photoshop, you know. They did Photoshop. If you go to the original, it is a little bit darker here. But here it's super bright, you know. And this is coming directly from the NASA webpage itself, you know. So it means they didn't do a very good job photoshopping this one, you know. This brightness under the ship should be the same brightness over here in the background, you know. So they didn't do a very good job photoshopping that one. All right. So that is the presentation on the photoshopping of images. Okay, that's, I forget which smoking gun number we're on now, but let's keep on moving to the next one. The next one is the famous hitting the rock. He's banging on the rock, and you can hear the banging sound coming through to the microphone on his inside of his suit. Okay, so sound cannot travel through a vacuum, right? So you shouldn't be able to hear this banging sound in his suit. Okay, now some people ask me, they say, well, maybe it's just the vibrations coming through the suit up to the microphone. But that's not possible because he's not wearing a solid suit, you know. Mm-hmm. If you were inside like a solid tin can and you knocked one part of the tin can, yes, that sound would reverberate through the tin can. But the suit is flexible, right? So the sound cannot reverberate in a flexible suit like that, right? So let's just play this video clip of the banging on the rock. There's many different examples of banging sounds being heard, and this is what I think is the most clear example of that, is this one where he's banging on the rock. Can you see it?
There we go.
Can you see the image, the YouTube page?
It's up right now.
Okay, Apollo 17. This is the official NASA webpage, and this is the clip, the time, 114 hours 40 minutes unto 122 hours 40 minutes, and you have to fast forward all the way here to 7 hours 31 minutes into the video. Oh, see, I like to show people the exact references here, okay? Yeah. Because this is something a lot of the people in the past forgot to do. Please show, if you find a smoking gun, show us where you found it, you know? And this is coming from official NASA webpage. So I'm going to show this thing where he's banging on the rock. Here we go. 2. Here, you can hear it. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Tuck, tuck, tuck. You can hear it, right?
No, the sound didn't come through.
You didn't hear it. Okay, so you only hear. Okay, let me explain this point. It's a little bit confusing. Did I stop? Okay, so you only hear. You see, there's many different examples where you hear one tuck like that, you know, like he falls down and he hits something and it's like a tuck. Or there's another scene where he throws the hammer and it hits the ship and it's like tuck. You can hear it tick and hit the thing. Now, if it's just one ticking sound, it's a, you know, you can make an excuse like oh, this was just a microphone problem, and it just so happened the microphone made this tick sound at the same time that the object hit. But here we have 4 tick sounds, okay? So it's a little bit hard to explain because many times he's hitting the rock, you don't hear it, right? But that's because his hammer is not making a solid hit onto the rock. But there's 4 times where it's like you hear tuck, tuck, and then he says, wait a minute, let me try again. Tuck, tuck. So there's 4 times where his hammer makes a really solid contact on the rock, and that sound actually comes up. So that's why I'm saying this is the best example of these hearing sounds, is because it's not just one tick sound you hear, but there's 4 ticking sounds. Okay. So anyway, you can just go to the I just showed you the YouTube channel and where to find that exact clip, and then you can go back and listen to it. Like I said, there's 4 times where he hits the hammer, and you can hear it quite well. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to go to the next smoking gun here. This is called what I call the lack of delay. So let me try to explain this. This is also a point which a lot of people have difficulties understanding here. Now, the recording of the audio is being done on Earth, right? So if somebody at mission control says something, like he's going to ask a question, so his question will go out, and that takes 1.6 seconds for the speed of light to reach the moon. And then when the astronaut hears that, he replies, and it's going to take 1.6 seconds for his reply to come back, right? So this is a 3.2 second delay must be there. Okay, so but the delay must come between when Earth says something and when the reply comes back. Okay, that's where the delay has to be there, you know. For example, if the guy on the moon says something, the person on Earth can reply immediately. There doesn't need to be a delay there. But if the guy on Earth says something, the reply coming back from the moon has to be a delay of 3.2 seconds. So now there are many examples of this. And for example, American Moon does a really good job of showing different examples of this, but they forget to tell us where these clips are, you know. Please, if you find a smoking gun, tell us where you found it, okay? So I'm going to tell you now where I found some very clear examples of this missing delay time, okay? And these are on the rover drive of Apollo 15. So let me share screen here. And I'm going to try to point out exactly where these missing delay times are. Sharing screen. So hopefully, let me know when you can see this.
It's up.
All right. So I'm just going to play this clip, and I'll try to point out when does mission control say something and when does the moon reply. So you can hear it. So here's Earth talking. Listen to his reply.
Yeah, the audio is not coming in.
Oh, you don't hear that audio?
No.
Oh, shoot. Okay, I forgot about that. All right. So anyway, let me just tell you. Okay, you go here to this YouTube page, which is Apollo 15
in
rover
60
traverse,
FPS. Rover traverse to Station 4.
To Station 4.
And the channel name is Dutch Steam Machine.
Right. So anyway, so what this guy did, this is not an official Apollo YouTube page, because this is not because Apollo didn't want this to be on their page, because this is very clear smoking gun here. So they don't have this clip on their. So this clip comes from the DVD called. Oh boy, what is the name? Yo. Spacecraft Films. Okay, so Spacecraft Films was the original DVD where they got all the original clips from NASA and they released official DVDs. So that's where this guy's YouTube page, he's just taking his clips from Spacecraft Films. And Spacecraft Films are the original unedited video clips, okay? So that's why if you go to the official NASA webpage, you're going to find the edited clips. But if you can get your hands on the original Spacecraft Films DVDs, those are the original clips. So these YouTube channels I'm using here, like for example, I showed you the one of the ship and the antenna was dangling, right? So the dangling antenna, you cannot find that on the NASA webpage, right? Because they deleted it. They don't want people to see that smoking gun. And the same thing here with this Apollo 15 rover traverse. They don't want you to see this. And if you go to the official NASA webpage, they're going to show you the edited version where they fixed all these time delay problems. So anyway, I'm just saying this guy, this Dutch steam machine guy, he's just uploading the original Spacecraft Films DVDs. So
it's funny, this guy's name is Dutch Steam Machine. Kind of sounds like the Dutch oven, and people are talking about in the live chat about what if you farted in space? Would it be sucked up into the vacuum? I don't know.
No, you would. Okay, it's actually a good point. Let me share. Let me come back here.
I'm just saying the live chat is talking about farting in space and what would be the repercussions.
Okay, yeah, my mother used to make this joke when I was a child, like, oh, it's like a fart in a spacesuit. So let me just say here, this is a point a lot of people make, okay? Why isn't the spacesuit puffed up like the Michelin Man? A lot of people say that. If the suit is supposedly pressurized, how come it's not puffed up? Right. So, but here's the thing. This is not a smoking gun here because the suit does leak. It was designed to leak. The zipper leaks, okay? So all these people who say, oh, it's a smoking gun, the zipper, because no, it's not a smoking. The suit was designed to leak. The backpack was supposedly supplying a steady supply of oxygen, right? And it was supplying enough oxygen to overcome the leakage of the suit, okay? So the suits were not airtight, right? So yes, if you did fart in the spacesuit, that would leave eventually through the leaking of the suits.
It would filter out, in other words.
Right. This point did come up the other day. There's a Buzz Aldrin interview where some child asked Buzz Aldrin, what did the moon smell like? And Buzz Aldrin says, well, the moon smelled like charcoal. It's like, wait a minute. If your suit is leaking oxygen out, how is the smell going to enter in? So the smell won't go in, but the smell would go out because your suit is leaking here.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's
thank you for answering that.
Yeah, it's a very all right. Let's come to the next smoking point here. This is the reflection on the visor of the astronaut. Oh my goodness. My YouTube just today is doing something weird where they're asking me to download some kind of a browser extension.
It's government interference since they knew you were going to be on the What is Truth podcast.
They knew I was coming here today. Oh my goodness. What happens if I refresh it? What happens if I copy paste the link?
If you need to refresh your browser, by all means.
Let me just. Whoa.
I'll just add you to the stream. If it kicks you out, you just rejoin. It's not a biggie.
Okay. Anyway, let me try one more time to copy paste this into my browser. Yes, that worked. Okay, I've overcome the YouTube blockage here. So let me just open one more so I don't have this delay again. Hopefully that's going to work. Yes. Okay. So I'm sharing screen now. Hopefully. Here we go. Share screen. Oopsie. All right.
There we go. I got it.
Okay. So now you can see this. This is the ISS spacewalk, right? Now, the thing you're looking at here is the sun reflecting in his visor, okay? You understand? You're looking in the face mask, the visor of the astronaut, and then you can see the sun. I'm going to go to full screen. We can watch the sun on the ISS spacewalk. See the sun? He puts down the visor. Again, you see the sun's reflection, right? You can see the sun's reflection there. Now we're coming over here to Apollo. I'm going to show you the sun's reflection here. Ah, look how big that sun is. You can see it?
Yeah, nice and fat, thick, and juicy.
Yeah.
That sun.
So
and in the other clip that you just showed for audio only listeners, it was just a tiny little sparkle on the visor.
Yeah.
But on the original ones, or from back in the day, it's just a huge glaring bulb.
Yes, it's a huge stage light with many bulbs all placed together into a round shape. Okay. So the excuse NASA will make is something like, well, it depends on the angle of the curvature of the visor, but that's not true, because in both images I'm showing you the same angle of the same visor, right? In the ISS, same visor curvature, same angle of the sun, right? So you can't make that excuse, right? It's the same reflection, same angle of reflection. It's just a different light source. That's what we're looking at here, is a different light source. All right. So that's another smoking gun here. Now we've got our last two smoking guns. Let's see. Let me try to open these web pages first before we go into that. All right, that's working. And next one. Okay, that's working. All right, so I'm ready to share screen now.
It hasn't come yet on my end.
Yeah,
yet.
I'm trying to. Okay, here we go. Sharing screen. So let me just mention here, what we're looking at is the exhaust coming from the booster rockets. Okay. Now, this is
beautiful.
The
all right.
Okay, you can see this chemical equation. Are you able to see this chemical equation?
Yep.
C2H12N4 plus N2O4 equals CO N2 plus H2O. So this is the chemical equation of what's called the hypergolic fuel. This is the fuel which NASA using on the Apollo missions. Okay, this N2O4, this is called the oxidizer. It's providing oxygen to the fuel. And this is the reaction. CO is carbon monoxide, and then you have nitrogen gas, and then you have H2O, which is water, right? So carbon monoxide is an invisible gas, right? So you don't see carbon monoxide, and you don't see nitrogen. These are invisible gases. But H2O is steam. So what you expect to see when the ship fires its engine is you expect to see steam coming out. And I'm going to now show you examples of that is here on the Soyuz spacecraft. You can go to, there's many clips of the Soyuz spacecraft docking with the ISS. And I'm going to show you the steam coming out of the boosters, the rockets. Here we go. Watch the steam. You can see the blast of steam, right?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yep.
All right. So there you go. That's the steam. Now we come here. I'm just giving another example of the Apollo
this is
lift.
my favorite one. I have this one in my intro, one of my intros when I do shows. The digital sparks.
Right. We've done several. So the point I'm trying to make here is that you should see steam coming out of the bottom of this engine. Okay, you should.
We shouldn't
it.
be
You saw
seeing
it
digital sparks.
Well, let me come back to that point, but that's a completely different subject here. I have a friend who's helping me make on the Apollo Detective channel. This friend of mine who's making that channel, he is a Hollywood expert. He works in Hollywood. So the technical name for what they're doing here is called a shrapnel cannon. What it is these are actually little chunks which are being ejected with the use of explosives. These are, the reason they look like rainbow sparkles is because of the type of TV camera they were using. It's a 3-color, red, green, blue TV camera. So when something passes quickly, it leaves these rainbow sparkles, That's just the effect of the TV camera. So the way they fake this is they lifted the ship up with a crane, and then they had this shrapnel cannon firing all these little bits and pieces of stuff in all these different directions. Now the Apollo trolls, or the Apollo sympathizers,
NASA apologists.
NASA apologists. They like to mention this little triangle here on the bottom. There's a triangle here on the bottom. You can see it, right? They're saying this is the blast. This proves it was real, but this is not. This is a result of the shrapnel cannons, and there is also a little bit of dust. They might have. So you can see dust flying up here. So again, the apologists like to say, "Oh, that's proof that this is real." But coming back to it, okay. Despite all of that, you should see a huge gusts of steam coming out of the bottom of this craft. That is a result of the chemical reaction, is that huge gusts of steam. You see, when you come back to the Soyuz missions, you see the steam gusting out, but this is just tiny little bursts of steam. But here we're talking about an actual liftoff. So the amount of fuel using on this liftoff is thousands of times more than that little course correction, little bursts of steam. So you should see huge gusts of steam. And of course, the NASA excuse will be like, well, this has to do with the dispersion of the steam into the space.
Well, there's so
But
many
that's not
things
true.
with this particular clip, like the size of that engine, or I'm sorry, rocket. I can't remember exactly, but it was like so many thousands of pounds of energy required, to lift off. And someone has a video on YouTube where they have an engine half the size of what NASA has, and the amount of force and power that thing created was amazing. And so it's laughable when you see something half the size put out the force, and then you watch this clip. And one of the famous jokes that people always make on this particular clip is like, legend has it that the cameraman is still waiting for a ride home.
Right. So the official NASA story is that they had a remote controlled camera which could pan up, right?
Yeah.
So that's technically that's not a problem. I mean, you could do remote control camera. I mean, they'd been doing that from this 1964. So the thing is that the real smoking gun here, there's several, but one of them is that there should be huge gusts of steam. And this whole excuse about, well, it's just dispersing, that doesn't work, because the amount of steam here would be thousands of times more than that Russian ship. You could see the steam coming off the Russian ship, and that was just a tiny little course correction. But a liftoff, an actual liftoff, the amount of fuel and the amount of steam coming off that thing would be thousands of times more than this Russian ship. I mean, the steam should be bellowing out like a huge cloud, So the other smoking gun, this is going into a long, I don't think we have time for this, but when you examine the other footage, there's an inside camera, and you can see the pieces of ship flying off. Some of the pieces of ship are coming down rather than coming up. We did on the Apollo Detectives channel, we did a separate video about that, but we're not going to go into that today. I just wanted to point this out, that there should be steam coming out of the bottom of this. There's the chemical equation. Now let's come to the last smoking gun here. This is the blast crater. Are you seeing my screen here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the Chinese Mars lander, and you can see there's a huge hole in the ground where the exhaust was blasting a hole and blowing out all the rocks as the ship was coming down. You can see that huge hole, right?
Yep.
So this is what you would expect to see. So let me kind of do a little more detail on this. This is the Chinese Mars lander. You can see the hole very clearly. There's also a NASA Mars lander where they have a camera. They put the camera under the ship, and you can see where all the dust was blown away by the landing. So just to add this in, some people asked me then, said, well, what about the Chinese moon lander? The Chinese moon lander does not have this blast crater, because the Chinese moon lander dropped from a very high height, okay? But the Chinese Mars lander, it kept the engine running all the way until the surface. And that's what happened on the Apollo missions as well. That's why the Apollo mission should also have this huge blast crater. And not only, this is just a tiny little, this Chinese lander is a tiny little ship compared to the Apollo missions. So the blast crater should be much bigger than this, This is just a tiny little Chinese unmanned craft. So let's here's a link. Elon Musk, this comes from, hopefully this is going to open. It's not opening. You can see this problem I'm getting here with YouTube.
Yeah.
Let me copy, paste this. Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, you're back. Okay. So you won't be able to hear this, but this is just a little gem which Gerald White found. It's on his channel. And if you go to YouTube, it says, Elon Musk is concerned about Starship's engine exhaust digging a ditch on the moon. So if you watch this clip, Elon Musk is saying, when the ship is coming in for landing with those engines blasting, then it's going to dig a ditch. As the ship gets closer, it's going to dig a deeper and deeper and deeper ditch. And Musk is saying, as the ship might not even land properly because the ditch is going to be so big that it won't even find a level surface to land on. So here's Elon Musk talking about the ditch which is going to be left by this thing. So let me just come back here. Now, this is a very funny point. This is a web page where it's called Height Above the Surface at Engine Shutdown. Okay, you can see this web page?
Yep.
Okay, collect space, and a bunch of NASA fanboys are talking about all the details. How high were they above the surface when they shut down the engines? And they're giving all these different figures. Oh, he shut it down, and they talk about the speed. How hard did the ship land? They say Apollo 15 was the hardest landing. They cut the engines off at a little bit higher altitude so that when the ship actually hit, it hit harder. And it hit so hard that the engine actually hit the ground, and it even distorted the engine bell as the engine bell hit the ground. So all these intellectual guys are examining all the Apollo landing sites, and they're calculating how hard did the ship hit, and how high was the ship when they cut off the engines. And none of them are mentioning the fact that there should be a blast crater. There should be a hole in the ground due to the exhaust, okay? Now, they do offer one picture. I'm going to just click here on this NASA image. Hopefully that's going to open. It's a little bit slow. Sometimes when I open this, here it comes. All right. So
that looks like one of those photoshopped images you showed us earlier, like in the same batch.
Yeah. So the funny, yeah, this is official. This is the official NASA webpage. So here's the funny thing. All these intellectuals are saying, wow, you can see that the dust has been blown here. Okay, you can see the dust has been blown.
That's not what I see there.
Yeah, I see no blast crater. There should be a huge hole underground. So you can see a little bit. Oopsie, this is not. Okay, you can see there's a little bit. It looks like they maybe took a leaf blower or something. Maybe if you really kind of imagine hard, you use your imagination. You can imagine.
I can see Stanley Kubrick with a leaf blower pack on his back, going around blowing shit up.
Yeah, I mean, so if you would say this is signs of the dust being blown here, maybe there was like a little leaf blower.
If you buy that, you're willing to buy beachfront property in Idaho.
Right. This there should be a huge blast crater under this engine, because this is an extremely heavy craft, and they talk about throttle down. The reason this is the NASA excuse. The NASA excuse is that the reason there's no blast crater is because throttle down. But even with throttle down, there still should be a huge blast crater, because even here on the Chinese one, you can see this is just a tiny craft, and even with their throttle down, it leaves this huge hole in the ground. Okay. So this is the end of this is the 12 smoking guns. And like I said, there are more than 12. I'm just showing you a few examples for each one of these 12 smoking guns.
Now,
so I just want to go ahead. You have a question?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to throw in one last little thing here. Yeah. And I call this debunking the debunkers. Okay?
Oh, I know this guy. I've seen this guy's YouTube channel. He's a clown.
So this guy he's just a clown, exactly. And his name is Curious Droid, which is interesting. A droid, you think of the Star Wars, the Clone Wars, and the droids, So this
he
guy
also looks like someone whose hard drive should be checked.
Right. I mean, he's admitting that he's admitting that he's a droid here. He's just a parrot. He's repeating what he's told us. So he's standing in front of this famous image about we flew around the belts, right? We flew around the belts. That's why, So this is what all the debunkers like to say. So let's see. Where did he? Go ahead.
No, well, I just wanted to make one quick little observation and comment. That's the difference between us that question the moon landings and skeptics on official narratives, whether it's this or 9/11 or any other thing, is that we are willing to look at the apologist side of things to make sure that maybe I missed something. Maybe I'm wrong about this. We're willing to do that. But these apologists will never look at our point of view. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the biggest differences, in my opinion.
Yeah. So let's see. He's standing in front of this picture, right, of the supposed flight course around the belts. So where did he get this picture from? It came from this document. It's Apollo 11's translunar trajectory, written by Robert A. Browning. Okay, and this is just, I added this protractor. You can see the protractor, so I can show you the 30-degree angle. The line, this Robert Browning drew this blue line, and I added a protractor on top to show that this blue line is a 30-degree angle. So what happened was, in 2001, when Bart Sibrel made a funny thing happen on the way to the moon, and this other guy made that other documentary in 2000 about what happened on the moon, and even Fox did a presentation, and they're talking about the Van Allen belts in those presentations. So NASA did not reply to that. What they did is, this other guy named Robert A. Browning, he produced an article and about how they avoided the radiation belt. So this Robert A. Browning guy, he doesn't work for NASA. He's a carpenter, okay? If you go to his webpage, he's a carpenter who likes to study space in his hobby, okay? So this document is not even a NASA document. It's written by a carpenter. So this debunker
was his name Jesus?
I wish.
Just kidding.
I don't think Jesus would be willing to lie for NASA. So I'm going to debunk this Robert A. Browning document. So where did Robert A. Browning get his data from? Okay, Robert A. Browning. So I'm going to show you the actual NASA documents, which NASA uses. That's where Robert A. Browning got his data from. So hopefully you can see this. It says inclination, the degrees. Inclination, this is a translunar ejection. So that means the flight path from Earth to the moon. And it's showing the inclination, and here it says the heading angle, degrees east of north. So basically what you have here, inclination degrees, how many degrees away from the equator, and then the opposite is how many degrees east of north. So basically you have 70 degrees east of north and 30 degrees east north of the equator, right? So that kind of checks out. You know, you have 60-30, 60-30, 60. These are all the Apollo 8, Apollo 10, Apollo 11, 12, all the flights going to the moon. And it all kind of checks out. More or less, you got about 60, 70 compared to a 30-degree angle, right? So that kind of checks out. But now let's go to the next document. Hopefully that's going to open. Yes. So here we go. This is the return flight. Okay. The return flight. Wait a minute now. What happened on the return flight? So the heading angle, okay? As I mentioned, the heading angle should be around between 60 and 70 in order to avoid the Van Allen belts. Now, here we go. Apollo 8, heading angle is 121, so that's 30 degrees more than the equator, so that's okay. That checks out. Apollo 10 is a 70-degree angle. Apollo 11, 50 degree. What that means is Apollo 11 came in at a high angle, more than 30. But wait a minute, come over here. Apollo 12, 98 degrees east of north. 98 degrees. That means he's coming in at the equator. 98 is 8 degrees off of the equator.
Oh.
Okay, so that's the end of that discussion. You're talking about they wanted to avoid the belts. Here we go. Apollo 12 return flight went straight through the belts. Here it is. Here it is on a NASA document.
Yeah.
You can see the webpage historynasa.gov.
And this is why it's awesome to have you on, because if I would have been looking at these numbers as a lay person, I would have zero idea what the hell this is even talking about. So by you pointing it out, it makes complete sense. Yeah, holy
shit. Here it is. That's the end of that debate. You know, did they avoid the belts? No, they didn't avoid the belts. Goodbye, that debate.
That was awesome. My man, I know you had way more to talk about, and I've got all the time you want, man. So
right.
Well, if you want to get into that, I just wanted to make. Are you good going with a little longer?
Yeah.
Or? Oh, hell yeah! Let's do this.
I'm going to show my. This is. You can see this.
Yeah.
YouTube. This is my YouTube page. Moon-landing hoax. And I'm just.
Are you wearing a collar or a cape?
No. I'm wearing the same clothes I'm wearing today.
Oh, copy that.
It just looks
tell on your neck. Yeah.
It just looks weird because the way
the pirate ships. All right. Copy that.
They did something weird. Anyway, I just want to recommend this video.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I am writing a book currently about the history of the private central bankers, and this is a really nice video that I made talking about the history of the private central bankers.
What YouTube channel is this? This on?
Moon. This is my channel.
Is it the 0.1?
No, that's my second channel.
Okay.
The 0 Point Institute is just some experiments I did regarding.
Oh. Yeah, let me know, and I'm going to put it on the description and mods. As soon as he says what YouTube channel, please put it in the live chat. What's your YouTube channel?
I have two channels. One is Moon-landing hoax, Moon-landing hoax, and the other is the 0 Point Institute. The 0 Point Institute is all one word, like ZEROPOINTINSTI. It's all just one long word. But this is just some free energy experiments I have done.
I wanted to ask you on that, but before we head off into that venture, guys, this is not over. We're just getting warmed up. We're like the lunar lander. This is gonna be an epic podcast. Thumbs up if you already think it's already epic. Everyone in the stream is loving this shit. But before we get off the moon stuff, and we're gonna hit some goddamn rabbit hole, so buckle up. be ready for this shit. We're gonna be hitting the G spots of truth right now. But before we move on from the moon landing topic, I did want to bring up a couple of things because, like I said at the very beginning, I'm super obsessed with it. And one of the things, some people, I've had other engineers and super intellectuals on my show, and when I ask them about the moon landings, I'm not saying anyone in particular, but sometimes I feel them a little skittish. They'll go in on 9/11, they'll go in on the JFK assassination, but when it comes to the moon landing, they're like, yeah, I haven't really looked into it. It's not a knock on them. I can understand that, but what I want them to understand, one of the reasons why I'm so fascinated with the moon landing, personally speaking, is because once you realize this is 100% bullshit, and even if you're a normie and you haven't gone down the other conspiracy rabbit holes, again, conspiracy being a derogatory term to shut down any legitimate discourse, once you realize that the government lied about one of the biggest achievements in allegedly humankind's history, then you have to question every other damn thing that you have been taught and to believe in as gospel, quote unquote. So I'm trying to preface what Dr. Raza is gonna, the rabbit holes that he's gonna go down to. Once you realize that the government lied about the moon landing, everything else is fair game to question. And so using critical thinking skills, having an open mind, and remembering that, a lot of people, what I've been saying the last few weeks is that a lot of people get emotionally attached to certain things that they know very little about. They'll get super emotionally attached. And then when you really, really dig down deep, they really don't know jack shit about what they're talking about. It's just something that they were raised up in believing, and they defend it wholeheartedly, and they're willing to trash you and slander you and all these things, but they really don't know nothing. So we're about to approach another chapter. We're leaving the moon landings right now, and we're going to explore some other stuff. But I want to remind people, if we just showed Dr. Raza debunking the moon landings. It's all mythology. You have to question every other thing, whether it's 9/11, JFK, the coronavirus nonsense. Every other thing, you have to legitimately question it. But before we move on, I just wanted to make a couple of moon landing points. I did message you that Reuters article on Messenger. But one of a few other things that NASA apologists love to bring up, one of the things I like to, personally, what I like to ask them is, why haven't we been back after well over 50 years? And a lot of the times they don't really know the answer, and they'll make shit up. One of the things they like to make shit up is, oh, well, it's not worth it's budget cuts, and it's not worth the money. We got lunar rocks, blah blah. And then the next question I probe is, what was NASA's budget for 2023? And they get quiet, they give me crickets, and I say it was well over $30 billion. So the holes in the NASA apologies, you can break them down point by point every time. And that only solidifies my stance on that we never made it to the goddamn moon. It was all a show, and especially when you take into consideration the high profile. This is my theory, and I would love to get your opinion on this, Dr. Raza. But so one of the things, well, why would they lie about the moon landings to begin with? My theory, my belief is that when you look at the volatile era of the 1960s, we had MLK, whom I believe legitimately was taken out by the government. You had Malcolm X, JFK, RFK, Fred Hampton, many of these political activists that were rising stars. They were taken out. John Lennon. Many of these people were taken out. So the 1960s, especially if you were like me, I'm 40, I was born in the 1980s. The 1960s growing up seemed like something not remotely relatable. Now that I'm older, and I think back in the 1960s, I'm like, that must have been a hell of a volatile decade with all these high-profile assassinations going on. What better way to boost public morale than to fulfill the same motherfucker we assassinated a few years earlier in JFK? And then you have to remember Operation Paperclip, where we brought in Nazis, and that's another rabbit hole. Because when you first hear about Operation Paperclip, wait a minute, our government took in top Nazi officials into our ranks? That begins to open up a plethora of other worms, if you will. So that's my take. I'll throw it back to you, Dr. Raza. What do you feel? What's your opinion on why they had to fake this shit?
Well, there's two different questions. Why didn't... One question is, why did they have to fake it technologically speaking? And why did they fake it ideologically speaking? Okay. Technologically speaking, the reason why they had to fake it is because of the radiation. At that time, there was no way to protect the astronauts from radiation. So simple answer, why did they fake it? Because they couldn't protect the astronauts from the radiation. But technologically speaking. But the other question is, well, why didn't they just admit we can't do it? That's the real question here, and that's where it gets deep. And my answer, well, there's a couple of them. One of them, as you just mentioned, is to help the public. You see, because at that time, was the Vietnam War, and a lot of people were protesting, and it's like, wow, now we have a reason to be proud of our country again. But that's one reason. But the other reason is deeper, is because this is part of a Freemasonic agenda, the New World Order. And that's why all of the web pages, all of the news announcers, they said, what you have done has brung humanity closer together. We're all as one family. This is Nixon said that, and all the news and all the NASA employees were saying it, all the news reporters, like, now humanity is one. This is a Freemasonic talk for bringing in the New World Order, the One World Order. That's really why they did it, is because they felt that this hoax was going to unite humanity and help them bring in this New World Order. It actually has a lot to do with also 9/11. The bringing down of the towers was also Freemasonic symbolism for the creation of the New World Order. And I did a show about that just recently. But anyway, there's before we leave the moon landing subject, there's a couple points I want to bring up because we need to clarify a few things here. A lot of people talk about Stanley Kubrick, okay?
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you're bringing this up. That was one of the things I wanted to ask you.
Yes. So now I have, in one of my shows, I have presented a document which shows exactly what Stanley Kubrick's participation was. He was not sitting there behind the cameras. This is called a psyop. There's a WikiLeaks video where he was supposedly behind it. This is fake. This
that video of him, he's an old man talking about it. Yeah, that's been proven fake.
That's also fake.
Yeah.
Right. That's not even him. It's talking, this Stanley Kubrick confession. It's not even him. So the thing is, I have the actual document which shows his participation. What happened is when Stanley Kubrick started making 2001, he wanted that to be as scientific as possible, as Stanley normally would do. So he went, he was a perfectionist. So there's an article, I'll just repeat it word for word. I don't want to pull it up now, but there was a conference happening in New York, and after that conference, there was some NASA people hanging out at a bar, And then all of a sudden, like the bartender came to them and said, "You've got a phone call from Stanley Kubrick." These guys, these NASA guys went to the phone. Stanley, and Stanley said, "I want you guys to come to London and help me in the 2001 Space Odyssey." So Stanley hired 2 NASA employees to be his advisors in the making of 2001. So that was his connection. Now, so Stanley was learning from NASA, and NASA was learning from Stanley. Okay,
a symbiotic relationship.
Right. Later, one of NASA's chief directors flew to London, and there's a famous photo of Stanley walking around with some NASA chief directors. A lot of people seen that, but that photo is actually taken in London because Stanley never left London. You know, a lot of people make some theory like, oh, he flew to America to help them out. No, this is not. He was just giving them some ideas. And for those people who like to say Stanley filmed it, no. You see, that what I try to tell them is this: if Stanley would have been the one filming it, there wouldn't be the mistakes we find today. Stanley was a perfectionist. He wasn't going to allow. So the reason we can find, I just showed you these 12 smoking guns. If Stanley would have been the one filming it, it wouldn't have been filled with all these mistakes like I showed you. Stanley was a perfectionist. So, but he did advise them, and he did know that it was a hoax. And how do we know that it was a hoax? There's 2 reasons. Number one, as you mentioned, The Shining has all these little whistleblower things. But number 2 is Eyes Wide Shut release date was scheduled for the Apollo anniversary. Okay? And on his deathbed, he told his family members, I probably won't be alive to see the release of Eyes Wide Shut, but do not let them change the release date. He made his family members promise on his deathbed that Eyes Wide Shut release date must be scheduled for the Apollo anniversary. So this is Stanley's whistleblowing. You know, he knew it was a hoax, and these 2 examples show that he was blowing the whistles.
That's awesome.
All right,
and I'm glad you brought up whistleblowers because I did look at your Facebook group, and someone was asking, have there been any NASA whistleblowers? And a few were named, Bill Casing being one of them, and a few others. One of them that say them again.
Bill Casing, Brian O'Leary, Bill Wood.
Bill Wood.
I could tell.
One of them that I didn't notice and I added to that conversation was Thomas Barron.
Right, Thomas Barron.
Tell people about Thomas Barron.
Well, Thomas Barron was an inspector who died, and him and his family, his car stopped on the middle of the train tracks, and the train killed him and his whole family.
Right near his home in Florida.
Right. That's a very sad story.
It is sad, but why this happened? How many days after what important thing that he was doing?
He released a document. An inspector. He did an inspection on the ships, and he said these ships are not space worthy. And then boom, he died. And also, you could say the Gus Grissom thing. Gus Grissom put a lemon on the capsule and called this ship a lemon, right? It's not worthy, and that was also kind of a whistleblowing. And yes, I'm pretty sure he died because of that. So you can say these 2. Let me just mention the other ones. Everybody knows Bill Casing because he was Rocketdyne, who was a paper. He was checking the wording. He was checking the wording of papers. And then he figured out this thing is a hoax. He tried to make it, expose it. The other 2 people I mentioned, Bill Wood, he was also an engineer, but he came out on the movie What Happened on the Moon, that 2000 documentary, What Happened on the Moon. They interviewed him. He's the whistleblower from that. But he was very careful. He said, I don't want to get into much trouble here. Oops. I'm back. Can you hear me?
I'm trying to. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can hear you 100%.
Okay, now you hear me.
I was trying to give you the spotlight.
All right.
It's not working.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. Bill Wood was very careful about the words he said on that 2000 documentary. And he said, I have my doubts. And he presented some evidences that it might have been a hoax. But he's very careful. He doesn't just come out and say, yes, it was a hoax. He's kind of just hinting around at that. Now, the third guy, Brian O'Leary, the same story. He came out on the Fox interview, the Fox show, which also came out in 2000, 2001. And they did interview Brian O'Leary. Okay, this is a very interesting story. Brian O'Leary, on the Fox show, he was very careful about what he said. So what he said was, it could have been a hoax. He didn't say it was a hoax. He said it could have been a hoax. And he was a NASA astronaut. Okay, he was in astronaut training. And he didn't talk about this, but I did a lot of research. What happened was, I'm forgetting the date. I think it was 1970. I'm forgetting the date. I think it was 1971 or 1970. NASA brought in a new crew of astronauts to start training for a Mars mission. And that Mars mission got canceled. They said, no, that's going too far. We can fake a moon landing, but we're not going to be able to fake a Mars landing. But before they had decided to cancel it, they had actually brought in a group of astronauts and started training them for this fake Mars mission. And Brian O'Leary was one of the astronauts in training. I don't know so much about, whether he knew that they're planning on faking it. He probably did, But anyway, the point is, after he did this Fox interview, and he said it could have been a hoax, and then he probably got some death threats because he left the country and he moved into the jungles of South America. He was living on a commune. He was afraid for his life. He was living on just because he said it could have been a hoax, he ran away and was living in the jungles. But he did get interviewed several times, and he became passionate about the suppression of free energy. He became a passionate supporter of, and he mentioned on several interviews that yes, we do have free energy technology, and yes, it is being suppressed. And he also made a special trip to America just after 9/11 to talk about the 9/11. So he spoke about three favorite subjects: the moon landing, the suppression of free energy, and 9/11. And then, he's not with us anymore, which is really sad. I wish he was still alive. But on that note, I also have another friend who is a NASA employee who works in the area of free energy. And this is kind of going off into a different subject, but I do have experience with this suppression of free energy because that's my main
I want to hit
field of
that.
work.
Yeah, I definitely want to hit that. Hey, if you don't mind, right before let's get into that now. But before we head into that, I did want to ask you, how do you feel about Elon Musk's alleged launch of a Tesla into space? Did you think that was real, or I thought it was as fake as a mannequin rover deal?
Well,
but what's your thoughts on it?
You see, the thing is, there's no, in my opinion, there's only been 9 flights where NASA lied. Okay, Apollo 8, Apollo 10, and then 11 through 17 these were the 9 times that NASA claimed to have sent human beings beyond low Earth orbit, right? And that wasn't possible. They would have died. So now, but there was some other fakeries. There was a little bit of fakery in the Gemini missions. What it means is that they did send, in the Gemini missions, they did send astronauts to low Earth orbit. And they did even open the door and stick their head out. But then there's some other videos of them leaving the craft and doing some work outside of the ship. These are fake. So what it is, you get a mix of truth and lies. In all of it, in all of it. Even on the Apollo missions, that the Apollo astronauts did go to low Earth orbit, because there's videos of them floating around in the zero G inside of the capsule. So they did go to low Earth orbit, and then they just pretended they're reading off scripts, like, okay, now we've landed on the moon. This is nonsense, but
well,
they
Barsabrel has that amazing clip that I don't know, some of my listeners will probably know about, but it's that clip where they're doing an optical illusion on one of the windows of the craft, where they're simulating a freaking Earth sphere, and it's just an optical illusion. And then apparently it was recorded live at the time, and then when the astronaut moves away, it gives away the illusion, and you can clearly tell that they are within Earth's atmosphere, because the sky is blue and it's not dark like space.
Right. It's called the Earth glare. Earth glare is coming in the window. This blue glare.
Yeah. So, and apparently Mr. Sabro got that from a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information request, and
yeah,
that's
so the thing
video.
is that NASA considers that clip as not proof of a hoax. You can just go to the NASA webpage and download that clip. They're not ashamed of that clip at all.
Why? No. I'm not asking you. I'm just saying, in my mind, I'm thinking out loud. Like, what the hell? That is one of the clearest ones, because they're clearly in orbit. They're clearly simulating a sphere to represent Earth. Like, to me, that's one of the most damning clips. And the fact that they're saying, oh, yeah, go ahead and look at this, is making me ask that question. What the hell is going on here? It wasn't against you. I'm just like, it makes your mind boggle.
Yeah. So the only clip which NASA is really ashamed of is that Apollo 12 clip where the radar dish dangles down. They completely removed it from their webpage. It's like, oh, that didn't happen.
Yeah. So
everything else, all the videos, all the photos, they consider those to be proof that they went. So.
Yeah. Well, I think we hit the NASA clips pretty hard and deep. Let's move on.
I do want to mention.
Yeah,
I do want to mention one thing, because you talked about this people waking up. So the question is, one question I like sometimes to ask in my group: which woke you up first, 9/11 or the moon landings? And
9/11
for myself, for most people, it actually was 9/11.
Yeah.
But there may be, like nowadays, there are people who are learning about the moon landings, and then later it makes them question other things like 9/11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I saw that in your I'm sorry to interrupt. No, it's just I saw you posted one of my YouTube clips onto your Facebook page. And then someone commented, well, why are you delving into these other conspiracies and stuff? And I didn't comment. I saw it, but I didn't feel like replying. I just thought it was silly, but it kind of falls in line to what you're saying. Some people this may
Maybe
be
that
the
way.
first quote unquote red pill. You know what I'm saying? So they don't know about 9/11 and the rabbit hole that 9/11. I think if you talk to my audience, I would be willing to bet 98, 99%. We all know 9/11. We spoke a few days ago just to get ready for this podcast, but my audience will be fully aware because I've talked about this ad nauseum, but I live 10 minutes away from Muhammad Atta's old residence in Venice, Florida. And so I tell this fact to other hardcore 9/11 researchers, and they don't even know this, that Muhammad Atta lived out here in Venice, Florida, which Venice, Florida is in Sarasota County, okay? I want to lay this down because I know some of your followers are listening to this, and so this may be fresh information to them. So I'm sorry, some of my fellow listeners, if you guys have heard this a million times, but this may be key information for them. Muhammad Atta went to flight school in Venice, Florida, which is a little small town. Even 20 years later, after the fact, I think the population is like 20,000 maybe during peak season time, because we're a beach town. And he lived here in Venice, Florida. Most of the population here, the average median age is in the 70s. And everyone here is white. So there's no way in hell some middle-aged Arabs were going to lay low. They would have stuck out like a sore thumb, just like I currently do living in Venice, Florida. I'm a spring chicken, and I don't look like these 90-year-old white folks is what I'm trying to get at. So we stick out. They stuck out. I stick out today, 20 years later. But the one of the things that I tell even hardcore 9/11 researchers, what else happened in Sarasota, Florida, that is connected to 9/11? And some of them don't know none of these facts that I'm about to drop. So not only did Muhammad Atta live here 10 minutes away from where I currently live in Sarasota, Florida, but the royal Saudis that financed Muhammad Atta's activities. And that came out in the 28 pages report. Declassified information, not a conspiracy theory. That was released, and the royal Saudis lived here in Sarasota, Florida, that were financing them. And exactly 1 month before 9/11, they moved out in a hurry, left most of their belongings in their mansion in Prestanzia, a gated multi-million-dollar community. Okay, that's a weird coincidence. But wait, there's more. Where was George Bush the morning of 9/11? Sarasota, Florida. Reading My Pet Goat at Booker Elementary, only 10 minutes away from Prestanzia, where these Saudi royals lived. Just a coincidence, apparently. But if you ask the average person, do you know where Sarasota, Florida is? No one knows where Sarasota, Florida is. But what are the fucking odds that all these three major things happened in Sarasota, Florida for 9/11? I mean, there you go. So I'm sorry. Just thought I went on a little 9/11 rant, because a lot of people, I've been trying to say this over and over because a lot of people don't know this, and this is 9/11 facts. This isn't conspiracy conjecture or theory. No, this is facts. Look it up yourself. So I'm sorry.
I want to mention. You mentioned that the moon landing might be the red pill, or 9/11 might be the red pill. I want to mention a couple more. This is very important. First of all, the government has admitted twice that they lied. Are you familiar with these two?
What did you say?
The government, 2 times the government admitted they lied. One,
weapons of mass destruction?
weapons of mass destruction was number one, and number two was the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Yep.
They admitted that there wasn't even any ship in the area when they claimed to have been attacked.
Yep.
So if the government, so these, I don't know, I guess people who haven't taken any pills yet.
Babies in incubators that led us into the Gulf War. And then when you find out that the little girl that was crying about babies in incubators was a royal herself, it all becomes clear.
Interesting. So yeah, hopefully more people will start taking these red pills, like you said.
And now's the time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there.
He's dead, so...
My fellow Americans, I've said on several occasions that I wouldn't comment about the recent congressional hearings on the Iran-Contra matter.